Is Europe gearing up for war, and are we ready for the kind of modern warfare? Russia and Belarus have begun their first joint war games since the build-up to the invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Earlier this week, NATO had to use multi-million-dollar weapon systems and Dutch F-35 jets to shoot down a couple of cheap Russian drones that entered Polish airspace this week. More than a couple, but you get the picture. In response, NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte made this announcement earlier today.
Today, General Kinkowicz and I are here to announce that NATO is launching Eastern Sentry to bolster our posture even further along our eastern flank. This military activity will commence in the coming days and will involve a range of assets from allies including Denmark, France, United Kingdom, Germany and others. In addition to more traditional military capabilities, this effort will also feature elements designed to address the particular challenges associated with the use of drones. Eastern Sentry will add flexibility and strength to our posture and make clear that, as a defensive alliance, we are always ready to defend.
Well, earlier I spoke to a Lithuanian drone manufacturer who welcomed this development. He also explained how ill-equipped we are to deal with Russia's aerial attacks.
The level of adaptation is wild, actually, and Ukrainians are very good at that. They kind of show the whole industry how it has to be done. Of course, you need to have those very expensive equipment because it can do very, very, very big damage or protect us. But at the same time, what we're seeing in Ukraine and also what's happening in Europe, we're seeing new startups that are doing interceptors and some cheap solutions how to fix it, because we've been in war for 3.5 years, and to take down Shaheeds with this type of equipment is unacceptable.
And I asked Alexander Merezhko, chair of Ukraine's Foreign Affairs Committee, if NATO had been caught out by events this week.
Well, of course, it was tested by Russia because, Russia is trying to create these kind of provocations to see, first of all, to break the resolve of NATO and to see how far Putin can go in his provocations against NATO. And I don't know what will be NATO's reaction, but we definitely need serious reactions, including serious sanctions and including support of frontline states like Baltic states, like Poland, because they also remain in danger.
Well, let's speak to General Sir Richard Barrons, former Commander of Joint Forces Command in the British Army. Good evening, Sir Richard.
Hello.
I just want to get your reaction first to this announcement from NATO, bolstering the eastern flank, assets deployed from the UK, Germany, France, Denmark. I may have misname checked some of those, but, you get the picture. Do you think that is a sufficient response to what we saw this week in Poland?
So I certainly think it's a necessary response, because it's not reasonable to think that Russia by accident flew at least 19 drones into Poland, some of which penetrating almost halfway into the country. That was a test of how NATO would react militarily, and it was also a test of how NATO would react politically. So there's no option to do nothing. And I think sending a message to Russia that the alliance takes this seriously and is moving the capability that it actually has to be better prepared should they try to do that sort of thing, that's all good. But the wider question is, in order to manage things like drone attacks, NATO does need to move really very much quicker to produce much cheaper, more effective, more numerous systems to shoot down drones.
I'll come back to that point you're making just there about the production of drones, but just in terms of NATO's response to what happened in Poland, it was pretty flat-footed, wasn't it? I mean, when you look at the fact that a load of drones got through, when you say it was a test for NATO, it was a test that they failed, wasn't it?
So I think we could call it a score draw to some degree. The 19 drones, at least, went into Polish airspace. None of them had explosives on the end, but you don't know that until they've landed and gone off or not. At least 4 were shot down, but they were shot down by the most expensive aircraft almost in the world. They cost about £100 million each, the F-35, using missiles that cost way, way more than the drone. So at least they shot them down. Arguably the most disturbing implication of this drone operation by Russia is it seems that 5 were flying towards the airbase in Poland that does supply a lot of the equipment the West gives to Ukraine. And that was clearly a message. And to be honest, as Israel and many others show, there's no point shooting down something that's going to land anyway in a ploughed field. That's just a waste of a missile.
Fascinating. I mean, so let's talk about that, how NATO moves quicker, as you put it, to gear itself up for this new era of warfare. I mean, clearly using those F-35s and the expenditure involved in that is not sustainable. So how quickly does NATO need to use newer tech, cheaper tech to deal with this asymmetric warfare?
So it needs to move really quickly because, as some of your other correspondents have described, that the technical lessons have been clear from Ukraine now for about 2.5 years. So it's not a question of we don't know what's needed. It's a question of actually doing it. The technology exists. It's reasonably priced. Scaling up the manufacture of it quickly can be done. So that requires political will, industrial competence, and money. And money has been the issue. So perhaps today money might be less of an issue.
What do you make of these exercises, joint military exercises between Russia and Belarus that you're seeing today? I mean, Alexander Mereshko, who you heard earlier, the chair of Ukraine's Foreign Affairs Committee, said it couldn't be ruled out that this would be it's sort of concealing, perhaps planning for another attack. Do you think that's possible?
I think we shouldn't rule it out, and because we remember that before this current invasion of Ukraine started, there were Russian and Belarusian exercises, and those exercises grew over time, and the exercises finished, and they didn't go home. They denied that they were going to invade, and then they invade. But this exercise in Belarus is nowhere near really big enough to be a serious sort of invasion into Ukraine, and Belarus has made it very clear it doesn't want to do that. It's sending messages to the West that it's trying to build bridges, not blow them up.
Which is very interesting, isn't it? Because they've always been a very staunch Russian ally.
They are a staunch Russian, and they can't get out from under the Russian shadow, but nor do they really want to continue to be completely subordinate to Russia. But I think the point that maybe we're missing here is that those drone incursions into Poland and these exercises, they're part of the same scheme. And this is Russia messaging the West, trying to drive all of us into a very unsatisfactory settlement around Ukraine. It's essentially threatening the West that if we don't make Ukraine stop, things will get worse. And now is the moment for Europe to realize that after maybe 3-4 decades of a pretty easy ride, not least with the US taxpayer paying for much of our defense, now we have to stand up for ourselves. It's unfortunate, unpleasant, the timing is terrible, it'll be expensive, but we have to act.
And the UK is contributing to that NATO bolstering of the eastern flank. John Healey, the Defence Secretary, has also said that the UK could contribute to Polish air defences as troops in Estonia. I mean, are you worried that there's overstretch given how thin our armed forces have become?
So the first point, the contribution in Estonia is a standing thing, and the army is able to manage it. It's about the only thing the army can sustain with its heavy equipment right now because it gave the rest to Ukraine. And the Air Force assets, which is 2 Typhoons that are being moved to Poland, well, they move very quickly, and these are very small numbers of aircraft. The wider point, however, is absolutely a good one, which is if we have the armed forces that the post-Cold War era left us for very good reasons. So they were bound to be smaller and less ready because we didn't need them. And now we're in a world where we need them, and they will get overstretched very quickly. And so we've got to make them bigger, but we've also got to make them better. And that's about new technology.
And just finally and briefly, the UK has announced new sanctions on Russia today, but no sign of those US sanctions that have been long promised. How crucial is that in making Putin fear NATO?
You know, whatever the US does in terms of 2 things, supplying weapons to Ukraine and imposing really painful sanctions on Russian oil and gas, those are going to be the 2 decisive things that make Russia stop the war in Ukraine.
General Sir Richard Barrons, thank you very much for joining us. As ever, really interesting to hear your take.